The film opens with two children sitting on the roof of a house. The boy talks about how happy he was a few days earlier after kissing a friend. Hearing this, the girl beside him becomes overwhelmed with jealousy because she has secretly been obsessed with him for a long time. In a sudden burst of emotion, the boy is pushed and ends up hanging off the edge. The girl freezes, doing nothing until the boy finally falls. The story then jumps forward to a high school student named Scott Norris. He is popular at school, not just because of his looks, but also because he is an outstanding soccer player. Scott is counting on his athletic success to earn a college scholarship. That night, a college talent scout event takes place, and Scott joins the match with his team. The game stays scoreless until the final moments, when Scott takes a hard slide tackle. Despite the pain, he forces himself to continue. Just before the match ends, he scores the winning goal. His team celebrates the victory, unaware that a woman in the stands has been watching Scott closely the entire time. After the game, Scott goes to a friend's party and asks Karen if she has seen Jules. Karen actually has a crush on Scott, but Scott is clearly closer to Jules. When Scott finally meets Jules inside the house, they step outside to talk. As they grow closer and share an intimate moment, that same mysterious woman is seen watching Scott again from inside the house. Later, Scott is challenged by his teammate Brock to a running contest. Still affected by the rough tackle during the match, Scott slips and makes the injury to his left knee even worse.
Scott! Jesus, Scott! Scott, are you okay? What happened?
From that point on, he starts wearing a special knee brace to protect and treat the injury. The next morning, Scott goes jogging as usual. The mysterious woman watches him from her bedroom window, already memorizing his routine as he passes her house every day. At the same time, she practices how to kiss, because she has never had a boyfriend before, and Scott has no idea he is being watched. This is Crush.
Crush.
At home, Scott lives alone with his father, Mike, who is extremely busy and divorced from Scott's mother. Back at school, just before summer break begins, the English teacher hands out test results. The mysterious woman is revealed to be in the same English class as Scott. Her name is Bess, a quiet and introverted girl who is deeply obsessed with him. Scott receives a good grade, but instead of caring about it, he doodles on the paper and throws it away, showing that he only cares about soccer, not academics. Unable to resist her obsession, Bess retrieves the discarded paper to see what Scott had drawn. Later, Scott finds an anonymous love letter in his locker. It is clearly from Bess, though he has no idea who sent it, and he does not pay much attention to it. Meanwhile, after school, Bess is secretly watched by her classmate Jeffrey, who also has feelings for her. The next day during his jog, Scott accidentally bumps into a woman named Andie.
Sorry, are you alright?
Yeah, my fault.
Sorry.
She turns out to be Bess's co-worker at a music store, where another employee named David also works. Seeing Scott up close, Andie reacts with interest, and Bess cannot hide her jealousy. That night, Bess checks a tracking app. By simply typing in Scott's username, she can see his most recent location from just minutes earlier. She immediately goes to watch him and finds Scott practicing soccer alone while testing the condition of his injured knee. Later, when Scott returns home and his father is still at work, he finds Jules already waiting for him. She says she just wants to talk, but once they are inside his room, things quickly become more intimate. Their moment is cut short when Scott's father arrives home. After that, Jules secretly sends Scott a revealing photo of herself, hoping he will keep thinking about her. Before leaving, Scott explains that they cannot officially date. He needs to stay focused on his scholarship and does not want to damage their friendship. Jules, although disappointed, chooses to be patient and understanding. As Jules heads back to her own house, Bess is seen following her from behind. This means Bess witnessed the intimacy between Scott and Jules earlier that night. Bess then returns home, where Jeffrey is already waiting for her. He asks about her parents, since her house always seems dark and empty. Bess explains that her parents are travel writers who are constantly moving around the world and rarely come home. When Bess goes inside, Jeffrey boldly holds the door open to give her a flash drive filled with his favorite music. Bess reluctantly accepts it, but quickly sets it aside and goes back to stalking Jules on Facebook, studying the woman Scott clearly cares about. The next day, Brock is training alone in the bleachers when a sudden hand grabs his leg, causing him to fall. This attack is meant as revenge, blaming Brock for the injury Scott suffered earlier. That same night, Scott receives another anonymous love letter, this time inviting him to meet at a swimming pool. Scott ignores it completely. Meanwhile, Bess has dressed herself to resemble Jules and waits, hoping Scott will show up. Time passes, and when he never arrives, Bess, overwhelmed and frustrated, throws herself into the pool while screaming. Desperate to finally meet Scott, Bess takes things even further the next morning. While Scott is jogging, she deliberately crosses his path so that he bumps into her.
I'm so sorry.
Nervous and shy, she introduces herself and mentions that they are in the same English class. They end up listening to music together, and from that moment on, Bess becomes even more obsessed with him. She starts collecting articles about Scott, constantly checking his social media, practicing how to talk to him, and even imagining what it would be like to go on a date with him. Ironically, during all of this, Scott is spending time watching movies with Jules. Unable to stop thinking about him, Bess makes a dangerous decision. She sneaks into Scott's house after learning where the spare key is hidden. At that moment, only his father Mike is home. Later, when Scott returns and goes to bed, Bess hides inside his closet, silently watching him. Once Scott falls asleep, she slowly reaches out, touching his body and gently stroking his hair. The next day, while Bess is working her part-time job, Jeffrey suddenly shows up and invites her to have lunch together. Andie keeps pushing her to go, so Bess reluctantly agrees. Out in a quiet wooded area, Jeffrey slowly gets closer and tries to make a move. Bess immediately pulls away. Jeffrey then frames himself as the only person who truly cares about her, claiming that everyone else, including Scott, sees her as strange. Feeling disgusted and emotionally drained, Bess leaves him behind and goes home. Overwhelmed and desperate, Bess starts editing photos of herself, placing her image over pictures of Jules standing next to Scott. The next morning, Jules opens her curtains and is shocked to find threatening words written across her window, claiming Scott as someone else's possession. Convinced that one of Scott's obsessed fans is responsible, Jules calls Scott over. Instead of supporting her, Scott assumes Jules staged it herself for attention. Hurt and furious, Jules kicks Scott out. Later, while at a cafe, Scott is approached by his English teacher, Nancy. It becomes obvious that she is interested in him. She mentions that she often sees him jogging from her apartment and gives him her phone number under the excuse of helping with schoolwork during summer break. After Nancy leaves, Scott realizes that Bess and her coworkers are sitting nearby. He greets Bess, but she is visibly jealous of the attention Nancy gave him. At that moment, everything clicks for Scott. He realizes that Bess is the one who sent the anonymous love letters and may also be behind the message written on Jules's window. Bess shows him the drawing of Scott that he once threw away, insisting that he is special and talented. Instead of feeling flattered, Scott becomes even more uncomfortable around her. That night, Scott goes to Jules's house to apologize and admits that he knows who has been tormenting her. However, he chooses not to reveal the name, hoping to avoid making things worse. Meanwhile, back at home, Bess is still furious about Nancy and convinced that the teacher is shamelessly trying to take Scott from her. The following day, while Nancy is out jogging in the mountains, she is suddenly attacked and struck with a wooden plank. Leaving her critically injured and in a coma. At school, students can only hope and pray for her recovery. Later, as Bess passes by the music store, she sees Andie waiting for David to finish work. David finally confesses his feelings for Andie and moves in close, believing his affection is returned. Elsewhere, Scott confronts his father after learning that Mike secretly called his coach and asked him to bench Scott due to his injured knee. Even though his father insists he rest and give up his soccer dreams, Scott refuses to stop training. That morning, he goes swimming to strengthen his knee. While he is in the pool, someone quietly takes his phone from the edge and drops it into the water. The phone malfunctions, and when Scott later checks his email on his laptop, he is horrified to discover that private photos of Jules have been sent to many people. Panicked, Scott rushes to Jules's house, but she is too hurt and angry to open the door. With no other option, Scott goes straight to a cafe to confront Bess, convinced she is responsible for everything that has gone too far. Bess stays silent as Scott lashes out at her. Moments later, Jeffrey shows up, defends Bess, and insults Jules, which finally pushes Scott to snap and attack him. When Scott gets home, Mike tells him that he will be away on a work trip for a few days. He also asks Scott to call his soccer coach, revealing that he has changed his mind. Mike is now fully supportive of his son and wants the coach to focus on helping Scott recover his injured knee. Later, after leaving the field, Scott catches up with Jules as she heads home and tries to explain that he was not the one who sent those photos. Jules, however, is completely exhausted by everything surrounding Scott. She walks away from him and decides to continue partying at a friend's house. Elsewhere, Bess is soaking in her bathtub, unable to stop thinking about Scott and everything that has happened. At the party, Jules breaks down in the bathroom, overwhelmed by her feelings for Scott. Not long after, Bess appears and offers her a tissue. Jules thanks her for being kind, then returns to the party and drinks until she is completely wasted. Later, when Jules falls asleep on a couch, someone quietly approaches and presses a pillow over her face. Jules briefly loses consciousness, but fortunately regains it. As she tries to leave the party, Scott arrives and sees the fear on her face. He immediately takes her home. After hearing what just happened, Scott becomes even more convinced that Bess is responsible and decides that he needs to end this once and for all. On his way home, Scott accidentally bumps into Andie, who is riding her bike.
Shit.
Andie's leg is badly injured, so Scott quickly gives her his shirt to stop the bleeding and offers to take her home. At Andie's house, the wound continues to bleed, and Scott insists on taking her to the hospital. Andie refuses, saying her first aid kit is enough. Scott helps clean and bandage the wound. When he goes to return the kit to the kitchen, he is suddenly struck and knocked unconscious. At that moment, the truth is revealed. Andie is the one behind everything. She has been the one acting recklessly all along, driven by her obsession with Scott. Bess was obsessed too, but only through stalking social media and sending anonymous love letters. The threats against Jules and all the violent acts were carried out by Andie. When Scott wakes up, he finds himself lying on a bed in Andie's basement, surrounded by flowers. As Andie approaches, Scott tries to escape. Andie grabs his leg, shattering his already injured knee, and injects him with a sedative. Meanwhile, Bess and Jeffrey appear to be growing closer, especially after Jeffrey defended Bess when Scott lashed out at her. The next morning at the music store, Andie and Bess talk. Andie shares her past, explaining that in high school she was deeply in love with a boy named Brian. He never gave her any attention, and he eventually died under tragic circumstances. Because of that loss, Andie believes that now that she has found the man she wants, she will never allow herself to lose him again. After that, Andie heads home and invites Bess to come over anytime if she needs someone to talk to. Back at her house, Andie kisses Scott while he is still unconscious from the sedative. After changing her clothes, her coworker David suddenly shows up, worried because Andie has not been responding to his messages or calls. Andie decides on her own that their relationship should remain nothing more than friendship and demands that David stay out of her life. David refuses to let go, insisting he truly cares about her and will never hurt her. Without hesitation, Andie stabs him.
It would have been so much easier if it was you.
After that, Andie goes back down to the basement. As Scott painfully struggles up the stairs, barely able to stand on his shattered knee, Andie forces him to draw her face, just like the sketch he once made on his exam paper. Fearing she might do something even worse, Scott gives in and does what she asks. Elsewhere, Bess finally begins to move on from Scott. She starts rebuilding her life in a healthier and more positive way. She burns every article she collected about him and removes him from her social media. Still feeling unsettled, Bess messages Andie and tells her she wants to come over to talk. At the same time, Jeffrey quietly follows Bess. Meanwhile, Scott finishes the drawing. Andie looks at it and is dissatisfied, demanding that he start over. That becomes the final breaking point. Scott attacks Andie, stabbing her leg with a pencil and slamming her head until she loses consciousness. Fighting through the pain, Scott forces himself up the stairs and out of the basement, just as Bess arrives at the front of the house. Bess rushes to help him, but Andie suddenly wakes up and attacks her. As Andie prepares to strike, Jeffrey arrives in time to stop her. In the chaos, Scott manages to kick Andie, sending her tumbling back into the basement. A few days later, after Andie's violence finally comes to an end, Bess sends a love letter to Jeffrey and invites him on a date by the pool. There, Bess makes the first move. At the same time, Scott and Jules reconcile and repair their relationship. Accepting that his injured leg will never allow him to play soccer at the same level again, Scott chooses to pursue art school instead, embracing the talent he has always had. In the final moments of the film, Andie is seen inside a psychiatric hospital, meeting with her lawyer. It is revealed that she has changed her identity many times and has confessed to killing the boy she was obsessed with back in high school. Her psychopathic behavior, however, did not begin with that incident. It traces back even further to her childhood. Andie is revealed to be the same girl who killed her friend at the very beginning of the film, and she ominously warns that she will eventually find a way to escape. So the moral of the story is, if your crush has this many admirers, secret stalkers, and surprise attackers, maybe just quit soccer, delete social media, and move to art school immediately.